la 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 la. Anche lei ha tutto il mondo, almeno è la lei. Anche l'amor non cogliana, when we see what take away. Welcome, we're back for another episode of The Lock-In. I'm David Lappin, I'm alongside Dara Kearney, of course, and in the background, over my shoulder, just over there, you can see the Portomaso Tower, which is the location of the festival series, Frankie von Zweigberg's festival series, which is here in Malta this week. Dara has made the trip over. Dara, are you happy to be here in Malta?
Very happy to be here in Malta. This is my first time at the festival. I've obviously been at Malta lots of times down the years for EPT, MPNs, Unibet Opens, etc, etc, but this is the first time at the festival. Heard a lot about the festival, and the thing which makes the unique festival is, in addition to all the poker, there's a very much a mixed games culture, which, you know, I don't really partake
we don't really do that much of, but yeah, a little bit.
And also a gambling culture. They have like a slots tournament, a roulette tournament, a blackjack tournament. Again, I don't have the gambling genes, so don't partake in that, but it's actually, it does create a unique atmosphere of people having what seems like very genuine fun, which you don't get anything. It is pretty unique, so yeah, I'm very happy to be here, and it does spill over to the Hold'em as well.
Yeah, I think there is a bit of crack being had, and I know Frankie obviously puts a lot of value into those hospitality packages, which his qualifiers are enjoying. I think they all involve, what does he call it, tea. They all involve drinking tea. Copious amounts of tea. Anyway, before we talk about the festival series and how our progress has gone in it so far at the time of recording, we're just about to start the weekend. It's Friday afternoon, people are knocking off work, more people have arrived, qualifiers have been here for maybe a day or two, but we were in Barcelona for the last couple of weeks. Now, Dara did the full stint, he did the fortnight, which was as big a Barcelona as you've ever done. We normally go in for some part of it, and you went from the beginning till the end. I did 4 days in the middle, bricked everything, don't need to talk about that anymore. Don't need to bring up any of the side attractions I did there. There'll definitely not be any intercutting of videos of me being, as Dara has just described me in a recent article, as what, Dara?
A Tellytubby who unexpectedly found himself having to take part in the Olympics in the gymnastics at the Olympics.
Yeah, so we won't be asking Sharon to insert video here, for example. That won't be a thing. Definitely not. But what we will talk about is Dara's EPT and Estrellas and Fortnite, because you did cash quite a bit of stuff.
Yeah, I had 4 cashes. Unfortunately, kind of in the wrong tournaments. I didn't cash anything bigger than a 1k. And given that I played EPT main, thankfully only one goal. I was prepared to fire two bullets and play day 1B, thinking that would be the softer of the 2 days. Also, it allowed me to grind satellites on day 1A, which was a good decision in the end, because I did win one of them.
Nearly won the other as well.
Yeah, I could have actually won all 3. In the first one, I was at 95% of the target at one point, and managed to get across the line. And in the last one, I did a flip for a seed as well. So it could have been 3 for 3, which would have been amazing. But in any case, still a good day. I cashed 2 1Ks on the final 500. And I also won a silver pass, which was a very nice bonus. Silver pass worth 2.5 grand in W Club tickets. That was for just having my PokerStars account linked to my PS Live account. Everybody who did that was put into effectively a all-in or fold at their table in Estrellas. Came back from a break, found that there were 5 other people at my table who were in. I got dealt Jack 6, flopped middle pair on the flop, but I was behind top pair, but then turned trips. Most of the time you only won a bronze pass, which was $109 value. Throughout the room, in the 100 tables, they had a few silver passes sprinkled, let's say, and luckily one of them was sprinkled on my table. So yeah, that was a real bonus. Yeah, so it was you know, I cashed 4 events, which is nice, but one decent cash in a bigger buy-in would have obviously been better. But Barcelona itself, huge success. It's a great city to be in. Like, you can really just enjoy the city for what it is. Very arty, cultural city, very good food, very healthy food, and it's kind of the closest thing I guess we have in Europe to a WSOP, where you meet all these people that you play against online all the time, and they're all there.
Yeah, no, it was really enjoyable. As I said, only had a few days there myself, but I do love Barcelona as a city. It might be a city I eventually live in, and yeah, always love to make the trip. One thing I'm going to pick up on from that trip of yours, though, Dara, because you wrote this article just afterwards, probably people have read it already, was a piece on Milestone Satellites, which I really liked, by the way. It was a really well thought through piece. I know you obviously wrote the kind of extra chapter on milestones after the release of Poker Satellite Strategy. I think in the more recent versions of the book, if you buy it now, a bit of a brief history of these tournaments and advice and strategy in them is given. But you know, actually you wrote a very eloquent piece on how they're sort of not really doing what they were set out to do, or at the very least they're creating new issues. You know, obviously the old-fashioned satellites, very unpopular with the organisers because they had to police stalling on the bubbles, which of course we hate here at the chip race. Hate to see people stall personally. I think it's awful. But of course, when you solve a problem, you often cause another one, and you wrote very well on maybe some of those issues.
Yeah, like for example, one popular misconception is that they force people to play, or at least that they reward very loose play, and like they don't really, because you just have to get, even in the American version where you have to get to the milestone, or actually, sorry, in the American versions you generally don't have to go to the milestone. In the European versions you do, but even in that version, to make it so that everybody who gets a seat reaches the milestone, they have to redistribute chips every time somebody gets across the line. And you know, there's a very obvious exploit there, which is to late reg at the point where there's a bunch of people who are on the edge and you can get all these free chips. One of the best female players in the world, I won't out her by name, but she did admit to me that she always walks around those and looks for the point at which there are lots of stacks on the cusp of the target, and then decides that's, and particularly if there's free seats at their table, and decides that that's the best time to register.
Nice.
And then, you know, it does, even if you're not that blatant about it, it does reward you for just surviving into the tournament to the point where that starts to happen and you start getting all these free chips. I worked out in the seat that I won, I think 30% of the chips came from redistributions of other people.
Wow.
So, you know, there were chips I did nothing for other than just be at the table when they got across the line. So I don't really buy the argument that it rewards players and punishes nits. I would say it's the exact opposite, and most professionals I spoke to, who I played quite a few of them, agree as well. You know, then there's the other thing about sorry, I'm slightly misremembering what my other point was, but certainly, yeah, collusion. A lot of people say that they solve the problem with collusion, but again they don't, because, you know, Dave is there, I'm here, I'm almost on the target.
One raise and take it, and my lines get you over the line.
Across, and if I just, you know, wink at Dave and tell him, you know, you raise, I'll 3-bet, and you fold, and I'm across the line, and I'll compensate you outside in the car park. We would never obviously do that, but I'm just saying that it is possible. And then another point which stars often used to claim was that there was no reason ever to steal chips in them. It is a problem in traditional satellites. Now there is a big reason. I'm not going to say what it is because I don't want to tip people off to points where they're incentivized to break the law. Obviously we would never do that or encourage anybody to do that or even tell people how to do that. But again, it doesn't solve that problem either. The only problem it really solves is stalling. There's never any reason to stall. And I think the big attraction of them for organisers is they're just a lot faster. So lower labour costs. Now, so far they haven't really passed that on to the customers yet. You know, exact same rate as traditional satellites. So yeah, it seems like those two final points are the only advantages they have. I did realise I've actually written 2 pieces, only one of which is out at the moment. The second piece is on some specific advanced strategy concepts, which I only figured out from playing them recently in Barcelona and Vegas, which are not actually not in the book or the video that I put out so far. So I'll publish that probably on Vegas Slots Online in the next few weeks as well.
Very good, yeah, nicely done to pick up on that. Actually, speaking of articles, I may as well take this opportunity to pitch to you guys, I suppose, what ended up being a companion piece to the last article I wrote last month on the issue of late registration. It was really nice to see so many people jump on that one, kind of make it go poker viral, for want of a better phrase, and get a bit of a conversation either started. Actually, it's a conversation that has been long started, but, you know, at least amplify that conversation or get it back into the mindset of people. Something Dara and I have talked about an awful lot before. in that article, I obviously mentioned our involvement at Unibet as consultants and trying to get our schedule so that there wasn't too much of that. You know, again, it's always a bit of a balancing act. And then similarly, so with this piece, I wanted to talk about the issue of re-entry or multi-entry, or I suppose major criticism was of the concept of unlimited re-entry. Again, at Unibet, we came to a decision, I want to say, two and a half years ago, working out, you know, how to do this new schedule of ours when we were doing it. Shout out again to Andy Payton, who obviously put the real hard work into that. But the idea was basically that single re-entry was pretty nice as a sweet spot. And remember, we're talking about online here, where people will be looking forward to their online game, and getting to have a second go if they bust early would be nice. Pushing that into the live arena, I think it's even more important in a way. Although actually I just had a comment today from Brian Paris who said actually it's even more important to get this right online if you want to create a sort of a better environment for regs, for want of a better phrase, because you know there's actually zero issue. It's clicking a button for the regs to just keep going for this one if they're pros and they've got big bankrolls, so maybe there's even less of an impediment. But you know, certainly in the live arena, it feels to me as if we have reached a point where it's become so unlimited in the re-entry that it's actually got to be almost a bit of a pain now, where you go to tournaments and it's almost like the game with your fellow professionals, like, how many bullets did you do? Did you do too many? Oh, I did 6. I only got into my second, so I did better than you. And then people end up with a min cash, or you know, barely more than a min cash, and actually all they've done was like get half their money back for all the buy-ins they did. That's not a very nice experience. But actually what the pros are doing there is they're essentially using one tournament and creating a lot of volume out of it. They're getting to have 5-6 goes at it. I say within the piece, obviously some of the criticisms made by detractors of this multi-entry, unlimited re-entry format don't actually hold up to scrutiny mathematically. It's more of a feeling that they get, that they're getting more screwed than they are. But it's not nice to have that feeling, and it's certainly undoubtedly true that, like, if you just think of it from the point of view of, like, do you want 5 Dara O'Kearneys in your tournament? Do you want 6 Alex Foxes in your tournament? Not saying obviously Dara would never fire 5 because he would have got a stack through comfortably by his second or third bullet.
Did fire 5 as well. It's just
but you know, yeah, like essentially what you're doing is you're letting the really best players in the world who have no issues with money fire 5 into a 10k, and there's, just imagine there's 5 of them in the room. It almost ends up being like that. And if you're a satellite qualifier, you feel very outgunned by that. If you're a one and done kind of person, you feel very outgunned. So again, maybe the sweet spot, because again, we understand that organisers have to pay their dealers, organise the events. It's not easy out there. Some organisers really struggle to make money out of live poker, and they're doing a great job keeping grassroots poker going and live poker going. So I think when it comes to maybe the smaller tournaments, having multi-entry not as big an issue, but when you have these nice marquee main events, I think maybe capping it at 2 entries, having just single re-entry is a nice sweet spot, and it's something that we advocated for before. I'm not saying it's across the board. We had a great interview with Norman Chad on the last episode of the Chip Race, where he sort of said he'd love to see a world where it was like half freeze outs, half single re-entries, and maybe you sprinkle in one tournament per festival where people can just unload the clip if they want in a silly little, you know, maybe smaller buy-in thing. It doesn't feel quite so bad in something like that, but certainly in a main event it doesn't feel great. And actually I want to put this question to you, Dara. When you think about prestige, so like a company that have actually done this, to give them their credit, is PokerStars. PokerStars used to have single entry on even the regional events. Used to be single entry on the EPTs, and they have now
they were
allowed...
the EPTs were freeze outs actually up to recently, I think.
I meant single entry.
Oh, single entry,
single entry.
Freeze outs, yeah.
And what we now see is single re-entry, which seems like the sweet spot. It does seem like they've adopted that themselves over the years, and it's made those feel a little bit more prestigious and not maybe lose their luster quite as badly as something like a bracelet where people are firing millions of bullets into a hat.
Yeah, I still tend to agree with Norman that like freeze outs are the best of all. Because
I agree with that too.
Because anything you do which allows people to re-enter, a disproportionate number of pros are going to re-enter. So it messes with the pro to recreational ratio right from the start, which is actually not good for the pros either, because, you know, the pros edge comes from dividing up the recreational lack of edge, let's call it, or negative edge. So the more of them there is, the less there is. The only people it's really good for are organisers, because it gets more people into the tournament without an actual need for more seats. Because, you know, remember, by its very definition, re-entry, one person is just bust and now they can come back in. So it's not like you need an extra dealer or extra capacity. So again, similar to Target Satellites, I feel like the big winners are the organisers and everybody else loses, the pros and the recs. A lot of recs think the pros gain because they say, oh well, you guys can fire us off as possible, and that's true that we get to increase our volume, but we can make less of each than we would as a freeze out.
Good point.
So yeah, I personally would still like everything to be a freeze out. The only reason why I think single re-entry is better than all the other ones is that it's less re-entries than 2 or 3 or 4 or limited. But I still think it's kind of like a slippery slope. As soon as you start allowing re-entry, it changes the nature of the tournament. In EPT, I was willing to fire 2 bullets because that is possible now. That wouldn't have been possible in the past. And again, I was going to try and game the system as best I could as a pro by playing from the start or near the start on the softer of the 2-day one, switching over to the second day, and then I was going to re-enter on day 2 if necessary. You know, take advantage of the late registration thing. So yeah, I do wish we saw more and more freeze outs, but I understand why we don't. The organisers have no incentive to put them on at all.
Yeah, so again, totally valid points there from Dara, and I would reiterate that freeze out is better. And I suppose why we landed on single re-entry, as Dara quite rightly said, is because it's just less entries. If they're gung-ho and having re-entry, one is better than multiple. And I suppose the other small point would be, we do understand that there is an ecosystem which includes the organisers, and if they can get a little bit of extra money which helps them maybe make a profit on a tournament, and sometimes that might be the difference. And I do know from talking to a few people, particularly the ones that don't have big sponsors attached to their events, if they do, you know, allow re-entry and that gets them an extra 25% of the field, that's their margin. That's exactly where they get their money from. So look, it is something that has to be looked at, I think. Honestly, I think more likely to have headway on the issue of late registration. I think Dara's piece in the last lock-in, particularly the mathematical part that we did with Maureen, was so beautifully put out there, Dara. By the way, I just think it was so well presented that it just makes the case so clear for why that has to be curbed. This is something that I think also should be curbed, but I think we're fighting a much tougher uphill battle to win this one across the board. I think this is a harder one to sell because, I think just enough players will think, well, I like having a second go, I like having a third go, why are you stopping me, why are you dampening building big prize pools? They'll make those arguments, and they are the counterpoint, which is fair enough, but you know, they do end up being, I think, what was Norman's lovely phrase, he said one is the sort of kissing cousin of the other, and they're both sort of an issue in poker, and I suppose something we have to look at. Now, on that note, that's sort of our recent articles and what we've been shouting and moaning about, but we want to talk about the festival, and I suppose maybe no better place to do it than somewhere a bit closer to it, maybe somewhere over there by the festival, and maybe also because we don't know how good the sound quality is, we won't have the sound of the ocean and the waves lapping against us, because tide's coming in, Dara, and it's getting kind of close. I think we might leave it at that for now.
Yeah, we might be going.
La 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 la. La 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 la.
I'm back for the Hendon Mob day 2 tomorrow, so mixed feelings about going deep, but good fun nonetheless, and a nice addition. I know this was a last minute idea to add these nightly turbos. They are a good idea, so it's nice to have them.
What do you think about the festival actually listening to player complaints and adding them within half an hour, adding this tournament when the schedule felt too empty?
Yeah, I heard the guys moan it in there. There was a lot of complaining.
Let's not mention Scott Kenyon, but it was him.
It was definitely Scott Kenyon, who I think had booked so many tournaments by 4 p.m. today that there was nothing left for him to play, and he demanded that something new being created just especially for him. So fair play to him, he got it done.
How do you feel about you and Dara both being busted by our own Karev?
Well, Karaf is a very good player, and congratulations to him. Yeah, he took us both out in quick succession there. Dara and I have this habit of when one of us busts the tournament, the other one doesn't want to be in it any longer. So we usually simul-bust. This is not even a joke. This might be like the 4th tournament in a row where we both went deep and then bust in consecutive places. So, yeah, not unusual for us.
You are probably in the phase of the relationship when the couple becomes one person, right? So
yeah,
it's
that
only...
happened a long time ago for Dara and I. I think that might be maybe 7 or 8 years ago that happened. So,
that's only fair. Well, good night, guys, and good luck in the
thank
head
you very much. Appreciate it.
Rispondere signore Santo Mattei Ieri ha topsato nell'ia dei campetti tutta te Guarda hatta che bell'uomo a che vai a piegare La 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 Ia hada tutto fare ma pomsa bil maiari Lei mi c'è con dei safari ma basta comandare Monna hadda zappatitti hobza bisvejla kanzar Anche jgħja biex morru wassalli il-ħina d-dar Għalla skolla xidda l-barra jena bibdejna bixej Daqqa wahda biex titħalli li ħadbitti ħadri La 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 Jien fajtidi fuq spallejja għadri ġoċna mill-ixek Għax jena fajla bistija wejja warbu minn għawlek Waqt li konna qegħdin nimxu biex imbusa jena bistar Rat il-loħta telqet maħħa imriġaqqa u laqqa bistar Jena bħad nitkellem wahdi għaddi ġoċ nirringrazzjak Mela tista' stenneħ moħħok darbohra nerġa'
Okay, so our original plan was to film ourselves outside the casino on our way in to the casino for our day 2s. Dara and I had both bagged up for day 2. But what actually happened was our breakfast never arrived and we ended up panicked and we ended up having to run across there. And only thanks to Frankie and his very long-winded speech, which began at the start of day 2, did we even make it on time. I think we were going to be maybe late for the first time ever to a day 2, probably by 5 minutes. But Frankie saved the day with a really long speech. Actually, we caught about half of that speech, which I won't subject you to. But fair play Frankie, he does like to...
Yeah, in that speech I think he said that almost everybody in the world was in the room, which was a little bit of an exaggeration even by Frankie's standards. But it seemed like he genuinely believed that and he wanted to address each person personally.
Yeah.
So the speech went on for quite some time.
He had been drinking heavily for about 9 days in a row, so he probably did think that the whole world was that.
He has been drinking quite heavily for 45 years.
Anyway, I have to say, really good fun at the festival. You know, we joke about how there's that sort of gambling aspect to it, and it isn't our cup of tea. We'll never pretend that it is, but we saw firsthand how it does get a decent portion of the crowd going. They usually put those gambling games up on the stage. It created a bit of a fun atmosphere, and I think the guys did all enjoy it. At the time of recording this, it is Sunday morning and the main event's still going. There's 16 players left. They're actually about to return with those final 16. We will keep an eye on who wins that one, of course. But what I would say is Dara and I are not either of those people. I bust well before the money, and very annoyingly, Dara, you bust kind of close to the money.
Yeah, we were about 15 away. I think 85, 86 left, 71 paid. I had been navigating a short stack for quite some time. I had got double ups when I needed them. Yeah, guy who was visibly tilted, he kind of put on a masterclass of how to incinerate a stack with various plays like putting 3/4 of your stack in on the turn and then having to fold to the shove for not very much more. So he was tilted. He shoved ace 3 off in early position, followed ace 10 suited. The fact that I'm sitting here tells you what happened. But yeah, I mean, it was a great festival. These things happen in poker, obviously. It's vital that in poker that the worst hand can win as well.
And then you also had the double tiltiness of making it in time to play the mystery bounty and then basically finishing roughly the same percentile in that.
Yeah, a few off the money there as well. And I actually did have a big stack in that at different points. I made a really fast start after later edging it, got up to well above average, and then lost a massive flip blind on blind in a avoidable situation, really ace king against heads. Had I won that, I would have been going back into the money with the 2 times average stack, well able to attack mystery bounties, but not to be.
Has to be, unfortunately. Now, that did prompt an interesting conversation for us actually this morning at breakfast. We were talking about sample sizes, and we actually met Kat Arnsby for a bit of brekkie, a bit of brunch, and she was talking about how, oh, Dave, you had a winning festival, and Dara, oh, you probably had a losing festival and bad luck, and well done, Dave, and whatever. But Dara was quick to sort of point out that, like, we don't really think about things in those terms. Of course, yes, you can decide to bookend a sample at the beginning of one thing and then at the end of that same thing, but that's not really how players think about it. It's sort of the game never ends and it just keeps going on, and you made the point, Dara, that it's actually kind of damaging for people to have that mindset where they do maybe invest too much in the one like sample of a few tournaments that they play at one thing. Why is that maybe psychologically not the most healthy place to be as a player, recreational or professional?
Yeah, I think it is it's very dangerous to focus on short-term results, because it can make you change a game in certain ways. For example, like if you're very invested in having a winning trip, for example, then if you're slightly ahead on the trip, you might skip a few very good events near the end to lock up your profit, as it were. Similarly, if you're well down on the trip, rather than concentrating and just playing the most profitable thing, you might take a more punting style where you're trying to basically get out of the hole. At the very start of my career, my brother actually played before I did, and I remember seeing there was a very clear difference in our mindset. We used to play in the Fitzwilliam in Dublin, which was the main card club at the time. We were winning massively over the long term in there right from the start. But if we went and we played a tournament and both of us didn't cash, as we were walking out, my brother would invariably say we'd be better off if we'd stayed at home today. And I just, that never computed with me. I was like, but we're making money in the long term. What happens in any one night doesn't really matter. And I think it's the same, like, in Barcelona, for example, a friend of mine, and he was being very well intentioned, obviously, kept asking me if I was up or down for the trip. And to be honest, I didn't know, because I don't even track those things. I don't see the importance of that. Every tournament, you should just be trying to make the most plus EV situations, irrespective of whether you're on an upswing, a downswing, a side swing, any of that stuff.
Yeah, and I have to say as well, adding to that, I remember a conversation I had with Dan Wilson, one of Ireland's top players, a few years ago, and it was at a time where I did at least track my online results a bit more closely. Now, I think there's two sides to that coin. One, it is good to track your results, because if you do spend a little bit of time tracking them, particularly in the early stages of your career, you'll have a good sense of where you are over maybe a big sample, maybe over a year or a couple of years. That will at least guide you to maybe how things are going, and that's a good thing. But when you get kind of long in the tooth and you get further into your career, and I remember Dan saying this point to me, so it is sort of Dara's point made again but applied to online, is he never looks at his account balance at the end of any session. He never looked at what was in the little cashier anymore, because he just kind of thought that doesn't really matter. Like, again, it's the long term I'm playing for. If I sense that there's some issue, maybe I have started having some leaks or playing badly, that's a different thing, and we'll look into that. But really, it's not healthy to look at your Sunday of 50 games or whatever it is and see, well, was I up or was I down? It's just like close the browser and keep moving on, and I think that is a very healthy thing to do. Although, because I did have a winning trip, Dara, because technically my sample size of 7 games or 8 games or whatever it was my big takeaway is that I'm now a BowlCom PLO pro, because I came second in 2 PLO tournaments, and I think I should really take that forward and maybe focus on that.
Yeah, you should probably just play PLO tournaments that are 500 or less in buy-in.
Oh no, 250 or less.
And make your living out of that. Yeah, shout out to Dara Davy, by the way. When I put up this comment on Instagram that David was crushing the PLO, he said, oh wonderful. Now I'm gonna, because Dara does actually understand PLO very well. He's a very good PLO player.
And I do talk hands with him.
He's somebody that I send people to for PLO coaching. And Dara said, "Wait, I'm going to have to hear more Dave hand histories that started." So I opened Queen 744 in the hijack.
Yeah, with one suit. Definitely with one suit at least, or else I wouldn't consider that an open.
Same suit, yeah.
Look, It's been a really fun time, I have to say. I've really enjoyed having Dara here as company. Obviously, this is one of those poker festivals that's on my doorstep, not on his. I come to the Irish Open for one that's on your doorstep once a year, and maybe even sometimes to something else as well. The next big festival here in Malta, of course, is actually the Malta Poker Festival, also sponsored by Unibet. That's Yvonne Montialegre and Alex Henry's gig, Alex Henry of the Unibet DSO, and we're pumping the satellites out for that, and it's basically the most popular one again. So like when people were qualifying for Frankie's, they have the option to basically choose their own adventure. He had a Rosvedov stop, this one in Malta, and a future one in Bratislava, which by the way I'm sure will be very nice. Bratislava is a great spot, but Malta was the most popular. And similarly with the DSOs, when people win these DSO packages on Unibet, they get to choose what they want to go to. Lots of lovely stops in France, lots of lovely stops all over the place actually. It's quite a big schedule. I'm going to a stop in Marrakesh in just like 10 days time now, and I'm very much looking forward to that. But again, unsurprisingly, Malta, the most popular stop. I guess people from maybe Northern Europe mostly chasing weather in the autumn months where it's getting windy and cold where they're from. And yeah, very much looking forward to that in the same casino with the same team on the ground. But this time Yvonne Montialegre with the hospitality and the teas. And then of course we'll also have Alex Henry running the show, which actually I think for me personally as well means better structures. The one thing I would be slightly critical of at times is the structures, and people who've been following social media might be aware of that. And we're now being attacked by some people on bicycles and boats, so apologies for the sound. But yeah, look, I won't go into all my dramas about giving out about structures. That's for people who follow me on social media. But I will say that when you're in Alex Henry's hands, you're guaranteed a really nice structure. Dara, I know you've played some DSOs down the years, and he really does find a kind of a perfect sweet spot where you're playing a 500, but it's actually much more like the 1K circuit, that regional circuit, in terms of what's offered.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah, great structures.
Okay, well look, on that note guys, it has been lovely to be here in Malta. There is a little view of where we are. This is known as Spinola Bay. It's one of the nicer spots actually, it's got to be said. And yeah, it's been really good fun. We really appreciate you tuning in for what has been a fun lock-in. And oh wait, hang on a minute, maybe there'll be another segment. Dara, maybe we're not finished. I hear maybe last minute, very late notice, there might be a special guest. This might continue. Watch this space, and if it ends here, I was lying, I guess.
La 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 la